Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Sig MPX-K 9mm PCC. Look at this little guy, huh? This is the 4.5-inch variant of the MPX, known as the MPX-K, based on, well, previous generations of the MPX. One of the curious things about it, of course, is this is the standard barrel length that's available now. They discontinued, at least for civilian purchase, the 8-inch variant, which is what I really wanted. Going through the PCCs, as I have been, trying to find the ultimate unicorn, or the gold standard, if you will, it was time to review an MPX. I'd shot these before, the Gen 1s, the Gen 2s, and I was kind of, to be honest, ambivalent about them. Because the controls were the controls, it felt very AR-centric, and I didn't see anything remarkable that made it stand out, but I wasn't exactly paying attention to it like I would when I do a review, weighing it on its own merits instead of trying to compare it to other things. So I picked up the MPX-K. You guys probably know from previous PCC reviews I've done, I don't like the shorter barrel guns. I really wanted that 8-inch. But I ended up with the 4.5-inch MPX-K variant, so that's what we're going to be reviewing, going through the 2,000 round review process. Now, getting into the features of the MPX-K, what sets it apart necessarily from some of the other PCCs/SMGs that are out there. It is chambered in 9mm. This particular model is semi-automatic, so qualifies as a PCC. Some purists will get mad if you call it a submachine gun, and I'm inclined to agree with that, I guess, although I don't think it really matters. It comes with a Timney single-stage trigger, ambidextrous safety, which is a feature that some people want, ambidextrous charging handle, and operates on a gas piston system. And if you know, I'm generally not a fan of the short stroke gas pistons. However, when I did the review of the Sig MCX, their short stroke-ish gas piston system did win me over and kind of changed my mind compared to short stroke gas piston systems I'd used in the past. So big win there. The barrel is a cold hammer forged carbon steel in 4.5 inches. Now, one thing I automatically, right off the bat, hate about the barrel is the fact that it is metric left-hand thread, and it's tapered. So putting a muzzle device on it, other than the muzzle device that comes with it, which we'll talk about more, is problematic. And threading on a suppressor is an exercise in madness. Of course, the very first thing I'm going to do with any firearm once I get it zeroed and any firearm accessory I'm reviewing is the burn down, which is 500 rounds as quickly as possible through the firearm to see if that accelerated rate of fire is going to cause issues that wouldn't otherwise arise if you fired 500 rounds at your leisure. So without further delay, here's your 500 round burn down. Burn down went great, no issues whatsoever, no malfunctions, the trigger functioned good, accuracy didn't suffer significantly given what we were doing. And that's asking a lot of a short barrel to fire 500 rounds, and usually, you know, in semi-automatics, usually takes me 3 to 4 minutes to get all 500 rounds through there, feeding off these 30-round MPX mags. From first mag to last mag, I didn't have any issues, which is exactly what I would want from a firearm. This thing is not the most comfortable firearm to shoot for that extended period of time. One, because hand placement, well, I mean, you pretty much, the real estate, it's really non-existent. You've got an eroding beachfront here when it comes to hand placement. So I'm kind of relegated to a magwell grip, which is fine because the magwell has a good width and length to it. So hand placement isn't that big of a deal. And of course, the stock, I went with their OEM folding collapsing stock for the MCX/MCX line, which is like getting stabbed in the face with a butter knife. It gets uncomfortable very, very quickly. However, 500 rounds is exceeding what most people consider to be realistic for sustained rate of fire or long-term rate of fire on the firearm. So can't really hold that against it. If you're going to take this thing to a range session and you're going to shoot 200-300 rounds, you're definitely going to notice if you're using this stock. However, it doesn't affect your ability to shoot the firearm. It's just something that's going to be occasionally aggravating. Like every 10-15 minutes a child randomly kicks you in the shins. You know it's going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. You just accept it and you move on. The Timney trigger is probably my favorite feature about the gun. It's a straight bow profile, single stage. It's got a really clean pull and a really quick reset, which allows you to run this gun as quickly as you can get the reticle back. What I gain in some of the recoil pulse management that you get from the short stroke piston, I lose because of the barrel light. Now I'm using their OEM muzzle device because I can't just readily throw another muzzle device on it. I would love to throw like a Dead Air Chemo muzzle device on it, but I can't without some kind of special fangled adapter or special order parts because of the left-hand thread metric. Why they didn't go with 1/2 by 28 like the rest of the freedom-loving PCC world, especially the 9mm variety, I have no idea. There's some kind of eccentricity there that I don't know. Somebody made a decision and everybody else in the room nodded their heads instead of raising their hand and saying that's stupid. But I'm not going to hold it against them. I just think it's kind of weird that you would kind of go that direction. And I'm sure there's some kind of technical reasoning for it that was made, a decision was made by somebody and it didn't reflect what the market probably would have wanted. Because, like I said, especially in 9mm, we all want to be able to just plug and play with the standard thread pattern that we're kind of seen as an industry standard to be accepted. Because the barrel has a taper to it, even if you were to buy an adapter, you know, the left-hand metric to 1/2 by 28, there's no shoulder, so it's going to constantly come loose. As I found out, I put an adapter on it and I tightened it down and I put some rock set on it and I got it all torqued down specifically how I wanted it to be, which was kind of aggravating because I had to take the rail off to put it on. Then I put a suppressor on it and I was able to shoot it suppressed with 115, 124, and some 147 subsonics, and the gun functioned fine, except the suppressor adapter, thread adapter I should say, continually came loose, which required me to take the rail off, tighten it back down, reapply thread locker, put the rail back on, then shoot the suppressor, then go through it all over it again. So eventually I got to the point where I just stopped wanting to shoot it suppressed because I became aggravated. If this was Sesame Street, the word for the day would be aggravated. I'm not necessarily holding it against the gun itself because thread pattern is thread pattern. However, it did get on my nerves and made me not want to shoot it as much because I prefer to shoot things suppressed whenever possible. And when I do a review, I like to put as much suppressor time on it as I can to see if there's problems that would arise when suppressed versus unsuppressed. Because there's all kinds of plenty of firearms out there that shoot fine unsuppressed, but once you put a suppressor on them, they start acting funny. To its credit, the MPX-K functions fine suppressed in the time that I was able to keep a suppressor on it and not want to throw it across the range because the adapter kept coming loose because of the tapered barrel and the metric left-hand threads. So throughout the review process, I fired 115, 124, 124 plus P, and 147 subsonic, although I only used the subsonic when I was shooting suppressed for, you know, obvious reasons. Their OEM muzzle device is, it does an okay job. I would prefer more of a refined flash hider, although muzzle flash on a 9mm, all things considered, isn't that bad, but something to help tame the muzzle out just a little bit more would have been nice. However, if I can find a muzzle device threaded in left-hand metric, I would just go with that muzzle device, especially if I could get one that was suppressor native and I could adapt suppressors to it easily, and I won't go back down that dark road. Now, what about accuracy? One of the things that I have seen come up repeatedly, periodically, but repeatedly, with the MCX and the MPX line, but we're talking specifically about the MPX, specifically about the MPX-K, is a wide degree of accuracy that some people have attributed to QC versus different runs of the gun. This being the latest generation accuracy. I zeroed at 25 yards. That's my pretty much standard zero that I use for PCC/SMGs, and this one was going to be no different. So after I got my gun zeroed, here's a 5-round group I fired at 25 yards with 124 grain gold dot. Of course, this is a sample size of 1, however, that accuracy is not disappointing. Something I started doing, and I'm going to continue to do, is reaching out to 50 yards just to see what the gun is capable of at that extended distance. Now, a 4.5-inch barrel is basically a handgun, but this is a handgun with a stock and a 30-round magazine, and more points of contact for greater degree accuracy. So I wanted to see what I could get away with at 50 yards. So here's a group fired at 50 yards. Now I didn't readjust to 0, so I'm holding 25, point aim, point impact. The group's going to, obviously, point aim, point impact shift is going to occur because 0 versus the actual distance, but we're looking for consistency and accuracy. So here's a 5-round group I fired at 50 yards using 124 grain gold dot. I'm not terribly disappointed in that. Could it have been a little tighter? It can always be a little tighter. I will say that filming group, and then I fired a few more groups just to see, and I kept everything on camera just in case, and there wasn't a significant difference in one group to the next. So that was about as good as it was going to get at 50 yards on 124 grain gold dot from a supported position. But again, it's a 4.5 inch barrel, so I don't know what you're looking for. But you're probably not going to find that fantasy accuracy or accuracy comparable to what you'd get out of a longer barrel or a more precise round or a closer distance, of course, because all guns shoot one ragged hole at 3 feet if the shooter is even halfway awake. My only complaint, and I kind of already talked about the stock, so we're not going to go into that. Really, my only complaint is the rail. And it's just the fact that the barrel length limits the rail space, so it limits my accessory mounting options. Now, I went with a mod light for my light source because I believe all guns have to have a light. As far as activation goes, I went with the Unity hot button, which is actually really intuitive for shorter guns. Just because it's got that angled placement, it allows a thumbs forward press. Light activation is pretty easy to do. If this didn't exist, I'd probably end up with a Surefire tape switch or some other system that I could mount on the 9 o'clock there. If I had to go over the top, it would be a little cumbersome because of that brake grip and that taller overall profile of the receiver, and that's not something I'd want to do. So light mounting can be problematic, but if you don't ever plan on putting a light on it, God knows why you wouldn't put a light on it, but if you don't plan on putting a light on it because maybe it's just a hobby or range gun, you're not going to use it for any kind of self-defense purposes, then obviously this is not a problem you're going to have. All things considered, it's a great gun. I still would prefer an 8-inch version just because I like the longer barreled SMGs. I don't feel the need for something that's short, and I certainly didn't feel the need to get the Rattler, which is kind of like a compact handgun with a stock. Although that's just, of course, my opinion. And this being a sample size review of one, I was pleasantly surprised to find that I really do, despite the barrel length, like this gun a lot. And I've been surprised a couple times recently with Sig products, and I think this is no different. I want everybody to make good equipment, just not everybody can, but I'm finding the MPX-K to be something I'm definitely going to keep. Is it the new gold standard? I think time is really going to tell about that, and I don't want to get into comparisons with other PCC/SMGs, but this is something that I have no problem saying I'm going to keep it. I'm going to continue to shoot it. It's something I would shoot recreationally, not only just for a review process, and it sits in the safe and collects dust to the end of time, because I'm not really a gun collector. So I only keep what I like and what I need. So if you're interested in what I think about the MPX-K, I think it's awesome. And if you want one, get one. I'm Aaron Count with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.